see you fly. Hey.
We were able to attract attention from Haven Islands. I think it's all significant in terms of where we're going here. And it tells you how Nevis is looked at by the media in terms of agriculture. So I think we're making good strides. You asked us have we watched anything for years to deal with agriculture. Well, we continue to support our farmers. Obviously, we continue to provide everything that's going to feed for our animal and livestock farmers. We continue to provide support to our shakers, our farmers who grow greens. Many of the greens that you eat now in salads and Nevis are being grown right here. But we also continue to invest in the broiler production facility that we know is well and truly on the way.
Reach nowhere, so you have it. Them no want you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want to see you rich, them will love to see you in a ditch. Them no want to see you on tour, them no want you get more, so get more. Show them you not afraid them, one load them. Every human have a something that them destined. That is your destiny, so be what you ought to be. Even if no want you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want to see you fly. Them no want to see you touch sky. Them no want to see you fly. Hey. Bling bling, now me call it King Kong. Every song I write, it's song. Tell me something, am I wrong? To believe in myself, with nobody above myself. Energy, build your energy. Love, charity, what a sight to see. What a colossal. Working to prosper. What you gonna stop for? Keep on this right on the corner. Hey, make way when I'm weird there. Hey, tell the hater them scared there. Hey, that is your destiny. You'll be what you ought to be. Even if no one you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no one you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want to see you fly. Them no want to see you touch sky. Them no want to see you fly. Hey. Them no want to see you fly. Them no want to see you touch sky. Them no want to see you fly.
Yes, we have broad animals. That's a problem. But you can even tell from the plant. How people used to be we need to get back to that. And I am trying to encourage, I put up my little videos of me picking a little banana, doing whatever it is, plant something. And my little plot is only the size of this corner. But from that I get banana, I get okra, I get sorrel, I got what else I got?
Reach nowhere, so you have to. Them no want you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way.
Yeah, boy, you got to find a way. Move this on for the screen. Hope everybody enjoyed the Easter weekend. Mine was reasonable. My team, one of the team them win, not the real team. But I feel happy with that one day. More importantly, Arsenal lose, and that made me feel extra better. And One Piece is back, so I feel wonderful. I'm not gonna be doing too much yapping tonight at the start, as there is a lot of things to get into. The first one is kind of yeah, this is really gonna be the warm up situation. So, in my comments and goings, I was made to understand that the year of 1976 was a tumultuous year, a dangerous year to live in the Caribbean. This is in the middle of the Cold War, the war for hearts and minds. Is capitalism or communism gonna win? And that also reached into the Caribbean. And so you had bombings in Trinidad, in I think Barbados, in Guyana. And this story is about basically one of the bombings of a Cuban plane from traveling, I think, from Barbados by an ex. In some of the stories, I see he was a CIA agent, but they say an ex CIA agent. So, yeah, we're going to warm up before we get into the real sort of things, them, with this interaction here. So.
The bombing of Cubana de Aviación Flight 455 was one of the worst and most critical terrorist acts in the history of aviation. All 73 people on board died in the bombing, which happened on October 6, 1976. There were 57 passengers and 16 crew members. The Cuban national airline, Cubana de Aviación, was in charge of the flight from Barbados to Jamaica when two bombs destroyed it. This event shocked people all over the world and
I think I've been missing something at the start, so make him up. I've been gone too far. Short little video. Warm up.
The bombing of Cubana de Aviación Flight 455 was one of the worst and most critical terrorist acts in the history of aviation. All 73 people on board died in the bombing, which happened on October 6, 1976. There were 57 passengers and 16 crew members. The Cuban national air.
Okay, so basic details. All 73 dead. One of the deadliest, as he said. I guess flights, bombings in the history of aviation. I did not know this happened in the Caribbean. Just a little warm up, historical. Show you that, things just happen down in the Caribbean as well.
Airline, Cubana de Aviación, was in charge of the flight from Barbados to Jamaica when two bombs destroyed it. This event shocked people all over the world and had significant political effects because it was linked to Cuban exiles who were against Castro and foreign intelligence agencies. It is essential to look into the politics of the time to understand the Cubana de Aviación Flight 455 bombing. During the 1970s, the Cold War peaked, with the US and the USSR competing for power worldwide. After the Cuban Revolution in 1959, Fidel Castro came to power and turned Cuba into a communist state.
So in this particular time, there is no Russia. It's the Soviet Union. So it would have encompassed more countries. If you look at the map and you see how big Russia be today, imagine it bigger. All of them stands was in Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, all of them stands, and then Yugoslavia, which is like the Czech people, them Serbians, and all these type of situations. All of this is the former Soviet Union. But anyway, U.S.-Cuba relations. And it's good to get the history, especially in, what is happening at this time.
Because of this change in ideology, Cuba became more like the Soviet Union, which made things more complicated between Cuba and the U.S. The Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, and other parts of the U.S. government worked hard to bring down the Castro regime. As part of these efforts, they helped Cubans living outside of Cuba who were against Castro and wanted to overthrow the Cuban government. There were many militant groups among these exiles, and to get what they wanted, they did things like sabotage, attempted murder, and other acts of terrorism. The Coordination of United Revolutionary Organizations, also known as CORU, was one of these groups. It was made up of anti-Castro groups and came together in 1976. CORU was behind several terrorist attacks. There was a planned stopover in Trinidad and Tobago on Cubana de Aviación Flight 455 from Barbados to Jamaica. A Douglas DC-8, a four-engine jet airliner used by many airlines worldwide at the time, was involved. Many people were on board, including Cuban diplomats, athletes, regular people, and some Guyanese students who had been studying in Cuba and were returning home.
I think the bombing killed the entire Cuban fencing team. Because it's about athletes one. Hey. You need to chill out now. You have 0%.
The flight left Caracas, Venezuela, and stopped in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, on its way to Barbados. It was supposed to start in Barbados, go to Kingston, Jamaica, and then return to Havana, Cuba. The people on board were from all walks of life, many traveling for work, school, or personal reasons. Cubana de Aviación Flight 455 took off from Brantley Adams International Airport in Barbados on October 6, 1976, around 3:15 p.m. The flight was supposed to go smoothly, and the plane was supposed to land in Kingston, Jamaica, in less than 2 hours. But 8 minutes after takeoff, at an altitude of about 18,000 feet, there was the first explosion. A bomb that had been put in the front cargo hold of the plane set off the explosion. Inside a suitcase that two people who got on the flight in Barbados had checked in, the bomb was hidden. A second explosion happened as the plane went down, this time in the rear cargo hold. The second bomb was much stronger than the first one, and it did a lot of damage to the plane's structure. It is about 5.5 miles off the coast of Barbados, but the DC-8 broke up in the air and crashed into the Caribbean Sea. Nobody made it out alive. After Cubana de Aviación Flight 455 was bombed, authorities in Barbados, Cuba, and other places started an immediate and thorough investigation. Freddy Lugo and Hernan Ricardo Lozano were the first people the police looked into because they had been on the flight in Barbados. Both men were from Venezuela and had ties to groups of Cuban exiles who were against Castro. Lugo and Ricardo checked in 2 suitcases that were later found to have the bombs in them. The bombs were very advanced and were made to go off at a certain height, which meant that the planes would be destroyed in the air. The investigation found that the 2 men had put the bombs in the suitcases and then gotten off the plane before it took off from Barbados. After more research, it was found that Lugo and Ricardo were members of CORU, a group of Cuban exiles who opposed Castro. They were hired by Luis Posada Carriles, a well-known anti-Castro activist who used to work for the CIA. Posada Carriles caused a lot of trouble with the Cuban government, and he was a very important person in the community of Cubans living outside of Cuba. Posada Carriles planned the bombing of Cubana de Aviación Flight 455 as part of a more significant effort to make the Castro regime less stable. Besides giving them the explosives, he told Lugo and Ricardo how to put them on the plane. Freddy Lugo and Hernan Ricardo Lozano were caught in Trinidad and Tobago after the bombing. They had fled there after getting off the plane in Barbados. Both men admitted that they were involved in the bombing and gave a lot of information about how it all came together. They said that Luis Posada Carriles and other CORU members did the attack. Lugo and Ricardo were sent back to Venezuela to be tried for their part in the bombing. They told the judge during the trial that Posada Carriles had hired
That gentleman there, Posada. Oh my God, I can't say it like so. Posada Cari, Posada Cari. If I don't say it properly, I'm gonna get what. So I have to pronounce those names properly. But that gentleman is the ex CIA agent that I was speaking to you about.
them and told them how to do the bombing. They also said that the bombing was part of a bigger plan by Coru to hurt the Castro government and hurt Cuban interests. Lugo and Ricardo were found guilty of terrorism in 1985 and given 20 years in prison. But in 1993, they were freed after only serving part of their sentences. In 1976, Luis Posada Carriles was also caught in Venezuela. He had fled to the U.S. after the bombing and was caught there. He was put on trial with Lugo and Ricardo and charged with planning the attack. Posada Carriles' trial was very controversial, and in 1985, he was found not guilty because there wasn't enough evidence. Then he ran away to the United States and stayed there as a prisoner for many years. Posada Carriles was never brought to justice for his part in the bombing of Cubana de Aviación Flight 455, even though both the Cuban and Venezuelan governments tried many times to extradite him. The bomb.
And that's where I have some confusion as to whether he was an ex-CIA agent or just a CIA agent. And also, if you want to understand why Cuba has been able to exist for so long, basically 90 miles off the coast of the United States, it was because of the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union went down, when the Berlin Wall went down in the 90s, and they said that was the end of history, that had a big impact on Cuba development.
The bombing of Cubana de Aviación Flight 455 had significant effects on politics in the area and around the world. A lot of people called the attack terrorism, and it brought attention to the work of anti-Castro Cuban exile groups and their ties to foreign intelligence services, especially the CIA. The Cuban government said that the U.S. was involved in the bombing because Luis Posada Carriles, a former CIA agent, was involved. Cuba also said that the U.S. government had helped anti-Castro groups like Coru by giving them money and support, which let them do terrorist acts. These claims made things even worse between Cuba and the U.S., which were already tense because of the Cold War and the U.S. embargo against Cuba. The bombing also had a significant effect on Cubans living outside of Cuba. However, not all exiles agreed with what groups like Coru were doing. Some were horrified by the deaths of innocent people and the use of terrorism as a political tool. The attack caused disagreements in the community of exiles and made some people think twice about supporting violent actions. In the years after the bombing, the Cuban government used it to show how dangerous terrorism is and how the whole world needs to work together to stop it. Along with that, Cuba also wanted to improve its relationships with other countries in the area, especially those that had been hurt by the actions of anti-Castro groups. The bombing of Cubana de Aviación Flight 455 is still one of the most traumatic events in Caribbean and Cuban history. The tragedy that killed 73 people, many of them young athletes and students, was a terrible blow to the families and communities that were affected. The attack also showed how terrible political extremism and terrorism can be for people. There have been many events in the years since the bombing to remember and honor the people who died. In Cuba and other places, memorials have been built, and every year on the anniversary of the bombing, people remember it.
So that's a little part of the Cuba-American history. It's part of the Cold War, And as I said, the Cold War was basically communism or capitalism. Which one going to win? And it was thought that communism would have died when the Soviet Union ended. Meanwhile, China was like, hold my beer. But anyway, this just goes into show you. And this is on top of the fact that the CIA confirmed, it is confirmed that the United States tried to assassinate Fidel Castro 634 times, at least. At least. That's at least 2 years of trying to kill a man. And if you try that amount of time there, basically his whole life, he was dealing with the situation. There's always been issues, and you see how far. This is just a little experience of how far he could get. So now we're going to draw a little bit nearer now. We're going to draw a little bit nearer. We're dealing with Caribbean history. And we're still going to stay relatively... What? I'm not seeing my guy. Where's my guy? 53 screen. 50, 51. Is me just got to scroll. It's not that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted you all to hear a video from Mr. Pete Hegseth, but unfortunately, maybe fortunately, that is not available. As I said, we ain't in no talking because you got a lot of things going on. We are gonna get to the goat at some stage in time, but we got to get to the National Assembly. I can minimize this, you know. I believe I'll still go here, man. I apologize for that. I just had to make sure I have the correct time. And this next video is from Parliament. Let me see. Wow. Oh, this is it. Okay.
Curtain rods are made out of a Lindros stick, an Eiserman stick, a Cicerelli stick, a Fedorov stick. Those are his curtain rods.
That's incredible.
A place where young minds were shaped, lifelong friendships were formed, and generations of Kititians and Nevisians were prepared to go out into the world and make them
national. And people, by the way, you're not got to worry with what this gentleman is saying. I think this gentleman is the cabinet secretary or something of that nature, and we ain't concerned particularly.
Undeniably so. This school was a symbol of the belief that education is a pathway to progress. But over time, that beacon was dimmed due to political mischievousness. Following that, between 2015 and 2022, all we saw were delays, dark clouds of uncertainty, and avoidable missteps that left the once proud VHS without a stable home. Plans were announced and re-announced. Expectations were raised and then disappointed. And what should have been a straightforward national priority became entangled in indecision, controversy, and unfulfilled commitments. The result was painful for many. A school that once stood proudly at the heart of Bastia was left in a state that fell far short of the standards our students and teachers deserved. For many citizens, the promise of a new Vassia High School began to feel like something that might never truly happen.
Condolences. Let me also take the moment, members of the press, to express condolence.
Okay. So I feel like, first of all, I want to big up all the people them who've been going to the press conference, the media. I feel like y'all have been asking some good questions. I challenge y'all at the beginning of the year, and I do believe I see a couple more follow-ups. Certain aspects of things I see that people are kind of doing some reporting, and by reporting I mean like you're going and you're asking questions, maybe of departments. You're doing reading. You're doing like a little investigation. If you want to find out, for example, if any application or any licenses have been granted by the Cannabis Authority, that in itself is a small investigation. I'm not saying it's a glamorous thing or anything, but these things do matter when it comes to you seeing issues popping up and your ability to ask good questions and really do your job. So that's why I big up a lot of the journalists. See a lot of improvement. Look, we skim, because we ain't dealing with none of the. We're not dealing with any of the Nevis newscast aspect, really. Maybe we might deal with the last little part of it.
By the area, because a physical office for the project management team is currently being established. This will be located.
Yeah, we're going to turn he down until he gets to the point when the media is actually asking a question. So, as I say, big up to the media. It helps you do your job better when you're more prepared, and I could see the persons from certain questions being asked, and also follow-ups that show that by people kind of walking on the ball on. So now I'm gonna turn it up now. And I don't know, listen. I watched this press conference and I was so happy. It made me smile so much. But it also made me feel disappointed that I didn't get to cover at least the question and answer segment live. So we're gonna go back. This is not the most recent press conference, by the way. That one day is also got in something, we can get to that as well. But this one here is the one I think for February.
Budget Von Radio. Now, Mr. Premier, in listening to you this morning, you spoke about a state-of-the-art kitchen at the Alexandra Hospital. But is there an update on the NIA's push to secure funding for the hospital wing project? At a previous press conference, it would have been said that the main challenge is securing funding. And are you satisfied that the hospital is operating optimally? The landfill at...
So I have two questions straight after that. Funding for the hospital, and do you feel like the hospital basically is operating efficiently at this point in time? That's it. Landfill and then some landfill talking.
Has been emitting or discharging smoke for some time, which indicates that there is fire somewhere. Considering nearby communities and business places, what redress does the NIA have to address the situation? Is the landfill being properly managed?
So that's a compound question. That also, I would like if that had breakdown in a two, but that's kind of like what's the situation and is it being properly managed? So yeah, you could kind of spin them up in a one, but really and truly you're going in two different directions.
Is there any truth to the NIA being embroiled in a case between Hamilton Reserve Bank and Intercoastal Finance Limited? If so, what is the next course of action for the government? And is there an update on the broiler bird facility on the island? I'll leave it for there for now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Budgeon. The hospital and the funding, the short answer is no. We have not yet signed off on funding for the hospital. We have a source of funding, but that is a matter that is still under active discussion. And so we are hopeful that if we can get that over the line, then we would be in a position. Everything else is ready. So it's just a question of us securing that funding. And as I said,
This is not no major thing. This is an observation. You have a source of funding, but you haven't secured funding. Okay.
we have been in discussions. I can't say much more on that at the moment. I will at the appropriate time, but I'm hopeful that we can get that over the line so that we can resume that aspect of the development at Alexandra. I mentioned the kitchen because I wanted to be clear that that aspect of it, the kitchen, is now done. And so we now, of course, have the unfinished wing that we've been working on that needs to be completed, and we have committed to that. But again, I say that we do not yet have the funding. We have a funding proposal, we just do not yet have it in hand. We have not yet signed off on it. So I'll come back at the appropriate time on that. Am I satisfied that the hospital is operating optimally? I think yes. We have constraints, as any small island healthcare system will have constraints. But I think that the developments at the hospital have simply been extraordinary. You know, what hospital anywhere in the world servicing a population of 13,000 has state-of-the-art CT scan services? That CT scan service there is well over $1 million in terms of investment made there. And I always want to thank the Jahi Foundation for partnering with us on that. We have brand new ambulances. We have continuous development at that hospital. We have mammogram services. We are providing excellent care. We have the largest number of doctors, and not just doctors, but specialists that the island has ever had. There was a time when Nevis had one doctor, one for the whole of Nevis. Now we have dozens of doctors, including dozens of local doctors who are there and offering their services to the people of Nevis. And we have others in training. I met, in fact, just yesterday with a young doctor that we have who's coming back as an ophthalmologist. And I was quite surprised at the time flew by. She said she'll be done and be back with us next year. So we continue to invest in our young people.
So so this is just like a little observation, right? The premier is asked, how is the hospital? Is the hospital operating efficiently? And we never hear any type of metrics to indicate that there is improved efficiency. What we end up on hearing is the amount of investment. We hear about the CT scan, we hear about the diversity of doctors and services and all of that. I feel like, and once again, this is not a criticism, this is an observation. I feel like something that would be more effective in this argument. Oh my God, what would we do? Hey, I won't get rid of would be to highlight Ginger would be to highlight results of these rather than to just keep it as well. You know, we invest this, that, and the other. Talk about how many people have used the CT scan. How many and went on to realize okay something was wrong, went on to save their life. You know what I mean? Like actively speak about the actual care that is going on rather than we never actually hear about the efficiency. We kind of just end up in a phase where it's like, okay, nobody complained to have it, rather than actually hearing rhetoric, words to describe. Well, by last year we dealt with this amount of patients. This year we deal with this amount of patients. We have grown the amount of patients who are going to clinics, so we take off the burden at the hospital. There are multiple ways how I feel like you go highlight it rather than being like, I see the amount of money we spend, right? But anyway, it's a style thing.
And we continue to invest in healthcare. So the short answer is that whilst there's always room for improvement, Ms. Budgeon, I believe that the question was, are we operating optimally? And I think we are. Notwithstanding our constraints, we are operating optimally. And when we talk to people who have spent time at Chateau Alexandra, they're saying that they had good care, they were taken care of, and they have come out feeling that our people there delivered a high quality of service to them. And for that, I'm grateful. Landfill operations and smoke. I confess that I was on my weekly radio show and somebody called in talking about the landfill is on fire. All our checks with our officials say that that is simply not true. The landfill, being the nature of landfills is such that they create gases. As the rubbish, as the garbage decomposes, it creates gases within the heap. My language is failing me, but within the compressed compound you see there will be gases happening. And so from time to time, those gases will create fires. And we have...
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I got to cut right there. No, this here isn't this now. I want you to understand. This now is something that does not seem like is a major problem. But for me, no, we got into the realms of major problem. First of all, it was asked about what she said specifically is we see smoke. And what we know about smoke is smoke come from when you got fire burn. So what going on? The premier now is saying that, well, when things over there and they're breaking down in the ground, it is emanating gases. And these gases are not just combustible, but spontaneously combustible. So you can just get fire. If there is something going on over there, shouldn't we be doing some kind of testing to see, boy, what kind of gas I come off the trash? And we also, well, I mean, we're going to hear it later, so we're not even got to reiterate that at this point in time. But this now, it doesn't seem like a major problem. But this is a major problem. You can't tell me that you cannot explain to me that the reason why these fires over at the landfill from time to time is because gas that can't work. And this is one of them where the initial question been good, but we needed some pushback with regards to that aspect there. Anyway, let me continue.
Had fires. I mean, you look at any landfill in the world, there will be fires from time to time. That's just a natural occurring phenomenon because the gases that are created sometimes are combustible. And then here with the heat and all of that added to it, you will have fires from time to time. We did have a fire there some weeks ago, and our healthcare professionals and our professionals at the solid waste would have responded. Now, I am told that from time to time there's still some level of smoldering or smoke, tendrils of smoke that one can see. But that doesn't mean that there is any fire or there's anything that's out of control. What I'm advised by our Ministry of Health is that the professionals at our landfill continue to take the necessary actions that they need to take by applying dirt. Normally they cover the site with fill, usually dirt, and they try to ensure that they maintain.
Once again, this seemed very innocuous. Listen, and this is how I'm coming to understand. At times, the Premier has a very good disposition. And so he could say things that are dangerous, and you not even know that they're dangerous. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2026, to counteract the emanation of gases that spontaneously combust, the people over at the landfill often undertake the groundbreaking activity of pouring dirt on the problem.
What is there and prevent any escalation of what is there. But I cannot in good conscience say to you or to the public that we will not have fires from time to time, because that's just the nature of what happens at landfills of that kind. That once you have garbage that's piled up and that is decomposing, over time it will create gases, some of which are flammable, and that leads to difficulties. And so I think I'm quite proud of how they've managed it, what they continue to do, and they tell me that if there is some residual smoke that will be there from time to time, that's just part and parcel of what one could expect at a landfill of that nature that is existing there.
Listen, I want to understand something, right? I don't pass some landfill, right? And the most I see, the landfill is so pristine. What you're seeing constantly is a set of bird. Go there, go look wherever, little wood or wherever, like places where they got like vultures and scavenger birds and then kind of thing there. Greetings. Smoke ain't smoke. It's vapor. I feel you. It look hazy. But this can't be what it is we're dealing with. And I will tell you that the issue will not be fixed until the issue will not be fixed until people start to get sick due to the gases that are emanating. And well, we're going to talk about this again, but let's just say, me myself, I have been kind of cautious. And I think I have expressed that there are moments in time when Dr. Kelvin Daly and the style that he portrays is not for me. I'm not saying that ain't for you. Everybody could choose whatever they want to do. I'm saying, not for me. Okay? That does not mean that Dr. Kelvin Daly does not have good ideas. That does not mean that Dr. Kelvin Daly does not have good intentions. That does not mean that Dr. Kelvin Daly cannot contribute meaningfully to society. Or that he does make up everything that he said. It's just that I does need a little verification. And Dr. Daly, I must say recently, he been hitting it so hard over the park, specifically with regards to Daly came and Daly say, High Court got him more. Premier say, NRP make up story. I'm say, no. Destiny gonna fix that there. Boy, I be gonna hear about some Destiny answers too. So we hear from Daily that don't the guy more. No, me talk to people in the way be say, he got more. Premier saying no more. Make up story. I walk around by the courthouse 6 o'clock in the morning. I by the courthouse. Courthouse are open up. I get ear road all of a sudden. Now we come back to the court. Make sure it closed now nearly a year. We don't know again now with that. And Dr. Daly was called crazy. Let me tell you something. You see, if this was the United States of America, anybody who gets sick walking down in another building there who was told that nothing wrong with the building there and had the sickness due to mold, if them would have get money, what? Is either that or they would have get some kind of big promotion, something would have had to share out at that day. May I try to tell you? I feel like even still in a Nevis, I mean, I think that we living in a system where people don't necessarily think they could get nothing out of it. But when you look at how that they're going now, so even Dr. Daly, big up Dr. Daly.
What I think is important and an important test, Ms. Budgeon, is that right next to the landfill, or probably not next to it, but right across the street from the landfill, is the Nevis Athletic Stadium, where all the sports days have been happening, where hundreds, if not thousands, of people are gathering. And I've not heard a single complaint being made by anybody that the sports is being disrupted in any way by anything happening at the landfill. If there are persons next to the landfill who are complaining, then again, I have not heard that. I think one individual has said that he's being affected, and I would say I'm sorry to that individual if he's being affected. But there are others who are right there, Delta Petroleum and all of them. None of them have said that they're being affected in any way, shape, or form. We've had no reports from any of them. And so we have to sometimes take the information that we get with a grain of salt, sometimes with 2 or 3. Right? Sometimes where the information is coming from is as important as the information itself. So what I can tell you, I'm not trying to minimize the situation, because clearly a fire is always something to be taken seriously. But so far as our professionals are telling us, there is no risk at this point, and whatever is happening there has been brought under control. And this is from our fire department, this is from our health professionals, this is from our professionals who manage the landfill. You asked, am I satisfied that the landfill is being properly managed? My answer is a categoric, resounding yes. It's an incredibly difficult job. We had a change in leadership recently, but I am very satisfied, and I want to use this rostrum to commend the board and management and staff at the landfill. When we are fast asleep in our beds, our workers are out there ensuring that this island is kept clean, our trash is collected, and it is properly deposited at the landfill. They have done a remarkable job with the recycling program to remove plastics and plastic bottles from this island, and we have already exported several 40-foot containers of baled plastic. These, to my mind, are demonstrative of the good management of that facility. Bearing in mind, Ms. Budgeon, bearing in mind that the facility is long past its sell-by date. That facility has long outlived its usefulness. And so the fact that they have kept it going, they have continued to serve the people of Nevis, I believe is demonstrative of not only their good management skills, but their commitment to this island.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. So I was saying, I feel kind of happy because a number of the things that the Premier has been discussing, we have been talking about on this show. No, I think me and mute now, man. But a number of the things that he has been talking about, I have been saying, spoke about the dump briefly. The fact that we need people in waste management, maybe if we call it waste management and not solid waste, or some of the other name, garbage man, that it will be a more attractive thing. But waste management, I'm telling you, that's a real big business. It's a serious business, and it will pay dividends in the end. You hear the man say, the landfill is past, is sell by date by a good bit of time. Can you manage if you got a building and the building go hold 10 tons of flour and you got 98 okay, good. See that? Sanitation. We could call it sanitation, all of them things. But if you're at 98% capacity and every day you want to continue to get flour, we could continue to say, well, boy, yeah, a good management, how come them people and I get overwhelmed? But there is overcapacity. We need to look at different places and different methodology. I appreciate the government. I think they start a recycling, boy. Not only that, if you look on over there might have been one of the places then where we could have carry garbage car nothing over there. So that might have been the new landfill. But I feel like we got to look at sending people away. We gotta build up businesses and we gotta find ways to deal with our waste in a different manner. One of the things that I would like to see from the government is the implementation of different bins. And by the way, this would be more substantial as far as understanding why you're paying the government. This is not a scenario where you're supposed to got to go look your own bin. The government need to give out a recycling bin, and then the government need to give out a garbage bin, and then be more clear about what is recyclable, what is garbage. Different you're gonna obviously need a sorting facility and then things. You got business in it. But they got to look at it holistically. Anyway, I believe we're going to a new interview.
You asked about the NIA being embroiled in a case. You know, Ms. Budgeon, if you look at me the wrong way and I decide to take action against you, you would be embroiled in a case too. Being embroiled in a case as a lawyer for some years, being embroiled in a case is neither here nor there. It's like saying you took a breath of air or you took a glass of water. Anybody can sue anybody, right? What I find is happening sometimes is people try to build up hysteria. NIA has been sued. The NIA is a government. Of course, from time to time we will be sued. We are a government with, what, 2,000 employees. Of course, from time to time there will be actions taken. But taking an action is open to anybody. If you told me there was a judgment against the NIA, then I think that's a matter for concern. But simply saying that we are party to some litigation is really neither here nor there as far as I'm concerned, because that's a matter that happened.
Oh, I pressed that shit by mistake. I apologize. I apologize. I apologize. So I was saying that to some kind of extent, what the premier was saying can be legitimate in terms of saying that this is not a big deal. Because they're basically saying that the people set certain standards and are not checking to see if those standards are being kept. So even if me got to go back. No, one minute mute that then. Really.
Management of that facility. Bearing in mind, Ms. Budget, bearing in mind that the facility is long past its sell-by date. That facility has long outlived its usefulness. And so the fact that they have kept it going, they have continued to serve the people of Nevis, I believe, is demonstrative of not only their good management skills, but their commitment to this island. You asked about the NIA being embroiled in a case. You know, Ms. Budgeon, if you look at me the wrong way and I decide to take action against you, you would be embroiled in a case too. Being embroiled in a case as a lawyer for some years, being embroiled in a case is neither here nor there. It's like saying you took a breath of air or you took a glass of.
Oh, okay. Well, what I'm saying is this. I feel like to a certain extent, I do understand what the premier is saying when he said that this is not a big deal, okay? I do get that aspect. But that is only looking at it from the perspective of saying we mightn't got to pay all the money, or we mightn't lose the whole thing. We mightn't be fully liable for what is occurring. There is another conversation going on. This is not the Minister of Finance speaking, this is the Minister of Finance. So he has to speak to international investors as well. And people have to feel as though there is not just a financial services department, authority, but an authority that is actually working and that there is law on these type of situations. So it's not totally true to say that this is nothing. And I was also saying that the last time this happened, because the regulator was sued, I think, by the man Michael Press, and Michael Press ended up winning his case as well. So this could have implications and hurt, cause some pain from the financial services perspective. And to show you that this means something, there is a new gentleman, I think he is, no, I can't say that. He used to work in St. Vincent, that was his last job at the St. Vincent Cooperative, and now he's moving to Nevis to replace Heidi as the regulator. So we're not going to say that this is nothing, but he has been, I think he almost take immediate effect. He start March 1st. So I don't think it's accurate necessarily to say that this means nothing.
Nobody can sue anybody, right? What I find is happening sometimes is people try to build up hysteria. NIA has been sued. The NIA is a government. Of course, from time to time we will be sued. We are a government with, what, 2,000 employees. Of course, from time to time there will be actions taken. But taking an action is open to anybody. If you told me there was a judgment against the NIA, then I think that's a matter for concern.
I hope that the next time that the premier can be settled by litigation and not a judgment case, man. Oh yeah, settled without litigation. All I will say with regards to this is that just pay attention to the next time the premier sue somebody, and we're gonna see if it's a big deal. Just pay attention. Remember, right now, when you get sued, anybody could get sued. In a matter, you're not embroiled in nothing. You're not embroiled. You're not embroiled. You're not nothing. You're not in a nothing. You're good. So we're gonna see.
Sir, but simply saying that we are party to some litigation is really neither here nor there as far as I'm concerned, because that's a matter that happens routinely. My understanding, and to the extent that I can speak to litigation that's extant, is that there is a dispute between a depositor at a bank and the banker. By law, that relationship is what is referred to as a debtor-creditor relationship. And basically, one party owes the other party money. And so the law has ample mechanisms to resolve that. So we have members of the press here. If one of you owes the other one money, I'm sure you know that there are ample opportunities and avenues open to you. You take legal action, you take them to court. If they don't pay, there are consequences for not paying, etc. How the government gets now into this litigation, I'm not quite sure. Because basically, rather than focusing on who they gave their money to, they've changed the focus now to say that the government is somehow responsible for them not getting back their money. I don't know how that is. If you go to TDC and you buy a car and the car turns out to be defective, what are you going to do? You're going to go to
Once again, specifically for anybody who is interested in what the allegations are, the people are saying, when you have a bank, you got to carry a certain amount of cash. Capital, they call it. You got to be capitalized to a certain extent so that if people come to call upon you, they could get over the money. So they must say that the Hamilton Reserve Bank is undercapitalized. It is the government regulator responsibility to ensure that entities are up to the capital requirements under the law, and their failure to do it is how they are alleging the government get involved. I feel like possibly this gonna be a halfway split. I feel like them are gonna get all. I feel like the premier is correct with regards to the fact that Hamilton Reserve also should have been a defendant, at least in this case. However, I do not feel like it might be accurate to necessarily to find if the regulator has not been doing the job, that there is not some kind of liability. So I don't know how this can go. This is one when I'm genuinely interested. Once again, I want this to settle. When things settle, I'll be not get no judgment, you know. I want to read a long judgment to explain to me all the things what the judge consider to come up to the answer. So I watched that one there.
consumer affairs and sue them. Say TDC sold a defective car. Some may say yes, some may say no. That's a matter for the lawyers. So we've hired a King's Counsel to represent the government, and that matter will play out in its usual course. But currently, I truly don't understand what the lawyers are trying to prove or what they're seeking to do. Because in the ordinary course, if you have a debt that is owed, you sue the person who owes you. Instead of doing that, they have decided to sue the government to say that the government somehow did not do its job, and as a result of the government not doing its job, they're owed money. But they didn't give the government any money. They didn't deposit any money with the government. Mark Brantley and the NIA doesn't have a cent of their people's money. So why don't you sue who owes you the money?
Oh, once again, all I'm saying is Even though the premier saying that this is not a big deal, if it is found out, if people perceive that the regulators are not ensuring that institutions are financial capitalized, they got enough money to do their business, it's gonna end up being a black eye against financial services in general, but the banking aspect of that specifically.
That's a matter for lawyers. There are a lot of lawyers in the world now, and they need work to do. So I guess they are doing their work. The broiler facility, we are on the way. I'd invite you to go up and take a look, Ms. Budgeon, and take some pictures for Von Radio, because the report I got is that we are on the way. The construction is progressing, and I'm very pleased. As you know, we've had a lot of delays on that due to redesign and all kinds of things. But currently, I'm totally on the way. I regret I don't have a, although they're filing reports now every week, I regret I didn't look at it before I came to the press conference. But I can confirm that construction has started and is well underway, and so
You get a report.
will proceed apace. Any other questions for me, please?
You get a report every week. You got a press conference coming up this week. Did you read the report? Nope. Next question.
Morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning.
Vernon George, the Observer. What is the government operational plans for the airport during the construction phase? Have the government already started negotiations with the airlines that is expected to land in Nevis after it's completed? Last month you said that we expect to sign the contracts for both the geothermal plant and the financing from the Taiwanese. Can you give us an update on that, please?
Financial Taiwanese for what?
For the airport.
Okay.
Last month, you also said that your government is satisfied with the negotiations with the Destiny project. Can you tell us, have you seen the environmental impact that Dr. Crossman was conducting? Dr. Crossman from the Destiny project.
Crossman?
Is that Crossman?
Oh, Brosnan.
Brosnan.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks. Can you give the nation an update as to who is the members of the independent oversight body for the Destiny project?
Mr. Officer, good questions. Good questions. So there we go. The answers to these been entertaining. Let me see if I'm going to be as entertained.
Thank you very much, Mr. George. So the operational plans for the airport, those are still being worked at. I suppose one of the reasons why we are committed to this airport project is because...
Yeah, I know it's quick. I know I got a short leash on this. Unacceptable. For anybody who is not familiar, when he talking about the operational plans, he basically say is how we gonna be moving when construction going on out there. Planes still gonna be coming in and them thing there. How will this affect business for the airlines, companies, etc.? Okay? The premier return with nope, we ain't work out that yet. This man has been selling this thing for multiple years now. And you're telling me we not contemplate, well, what we gonna do while construction going on? This seems to me like a basic consideration. Seems to me valid question. And really and truly, I just stop it before the word salad begin. So now, for those of you who have not eaten for the evening, here is your word salad. Enjoy.
There's not much activity at the airport at this time. We are hopeful that we could change that around. The intention, as I gather, is that the airport will continue to function for as long as we can function safely during construction. Bear in mind that a lot of the construction that's happening will not be directly affecting operations until later in the development. What I mean by that is, for example, when we're doing the road realignment, that should not affect operations at the airport. So,
Yeah, just another quick pass to explain something to her. Y'all realize the difference between when the premier is speaking about a legal matter and when he's speaking about solid waste, or when he's speaking about the airport or such? The same thing I see in Dr. Joe. I'm coming more and more to realize the premier only know about law, not a little bit of business too. And I say no. And maybe you know a lot. But when it comes to other aspects, blind like a bat does not know what is taking place.
I don't have the answer to you, except that what I've been told is that we will have operations continuing once we can do that safely. And then at some point, we will have to suspend operations because the existing runway will have to be, how should I say, shored up. It will have to be reinforced. And so clearly, we'll have to suspend operations. But again, I'll be in a much better position to tell you more as we get closer to that time. Have we started negotiation with airlines to land there? The short answer is no. We have made...
Once again, before the word salad, since you give me the short answer being no, ladies and gentlemen, this is once again, it seems innocuous. We are going to get the word salad, and the word salad is going to soften the fact that this is absolutely atrocious and should not be something that is accepted by the people. This is something that would be part of what you call a feasibility study. This study would tell you, hey, is there a market for Nevis? Is there a demand for people to be coming into the country? With the level of demand, will it substantiate the development? The feasibility study, you will already begin to speak to the airlines. These are people who you're going to speak to say, hey, you interested in having a route to Nevis? So right now, this is my proposition to you. We put in the cart before the house. We're going to build the airport, and then we're going to go out and talk to airlines and have conversation and determine if this is viable. Should this airport turn out like the last airport, the Concerned Citizens Movement did in 2006, we're going to implement a law what say they can't build no more airport in a Nevis. So whenever the airport done, we're going to look at the airport 10 years after. If we look at the airport and we see the dance before the lights, we're going to say, bye, this was a great investment. We might even change it from the Bansamwe to the Mark Brantley. Okay? But if we look at it 10 years after, and it is not saying anything, and you see how much rope may give mine. At that moment in time, we're going to have to say, Concerned Citizens Movement, y'all are not allowed to build an airport. Are you talking about here? Are you talking about port? Are you can't talk about the two of them together? You understand? Are you want to fly? Go sink it.
Contact, but we have not started negotiations because we felt that we couldn't go, Mr. George, to start negotiation until we were clear as to timelines. And as you know, we have had some issues that have arisen from time to time. So once we get going and we have clear timelines, I think it's a better time to speak. Bearing in mind,
build it and they will come. Let me let you know something. When I heard the statement, I was in a conversation with somebody, and I tell them the premier the premier was watching the Field of Dreams. If we build it, they will come. I stopped this to tell you the second part of this, which is not unacceptable. Unacceptable. He is not willing to have conversations until there are clear timelines. Bearing in mind, I think I have already substantiated to you that the airlines themselves are something that you're going to have to consult to determine in the first place whether or not you're going to do this thing. Because when you're in government, an airline is different to you, you know. For me and regular people, we are customers of the airline. When you are Mark Brantley, the airline is also your customer because you got an airport. None of big an airport. So he got to be speaking to his customers and getting feedback from his customers who determine, well, y'all want to come here? What would y'all need to come here? And all them type of situation there. Not we depending upon field of dreams. We will build it and they shall come. Oh my God.
The project, suggested project timeline that we're told is 18 to 24 months. So we should have ample time to negotiate during that period of time. The geothermal contract is not yet signed. We're still waiting on we have sent off, well, let me backtrack. We've sent off a signed agreement to the selected driller.
Listen, I apologize if I weigh in with that right now. We're coming on back to back. But I promise there are a number of subtle things being said, and because Premier have a good demeanor, they went kind of, I think, unchallenged. The Premier said, we sent off a signed contract. You know what I mean? So me and somebody, me and the audience right now, we're going to sign a contract. We're going to make an agreement. And we ain't going to do it together. We're going to send it off and it done sign. No. One thing I want to realize, because we're not here not yet. And as I tell you, that one you're old. And they send off a signed contract. If you send off a signed contract, and the others, the only way how that is reasonable is if we have already verbally agreed. And so now the signature is really just a formality. Why does Icelandic drilling have the contract now? And it seemed like them a negotiate, like them got the leverage. What is happening? And why we sending off a signed contract? Listen, Mr. Premier, here what I want to do, right? I want to bring back some of the glory days of history. It's long time. I had a little fun with you and tell you like a cut ribbon and we hard hat and so. And it look like you take it too hard. So here what I'm telling you should have do. Because this is really a big deal. You needed to have a public signing. You needed to announce the date and say, we're going to sign the contract. We're going to bring down the CEO, CFO, somebody high ranking in the company, and we're going to sign the contract. And it's going to be public, and we're going to know when we're moving forward. Listen, teach me idea now. See, I give you a whole full idea. This is what you need to do. Make this thing grand again now. See, him used to be elegant, huh? What's happening, man? Anyway.
The driller has not yet come back to us as of yesterday with their position on it. So we don't yet have
Once again, it not seem like nothing happen. I send you a signed contract. I only gonna sign them if we verbally don't agree. Let me let you know how this thing works. Really and truly. Yeah? Them people don't have the contract, you know. When we're doing a negotiation, we negotiating over terms. So, and we talking and we saying, well, listen, how we going to terminate the contract? When is money going to be due to be paid? When we expect delivery of item? When we expect the beginning of drilling? These are the things that are in there. The signed aspect only come in when we verbally agree. Hey, so we agree to this, right? So now we're ready to move to the next stage and move this far. No, he coming back and telling you, we have not heard from the drillers side. This is how come me and tell you, where the drillers and them get leverage from? Why be them, what the drillers and them now come back and say that they need? That clown needs to stop to lie, and people need to stop being quiet and telling you. Bye. I forget the lyrics right here. The lyrics right here today is, I'm not saying he's lying, but I can't tell you that he's saying the full truth either.
A signed agreement by both parties. So we are waiting on that, and then, of course, I'll update as we go. But that is currently, as I speak today, a matter that is still being discussed to finalize that. The Taiwanese funding, the Taiwanese...
Sorry, but I gonna come in and say what I got to say. How could you send me a signed agreement and we're still in discussions as to the final terms of the agreement? How that makes sense? So what we must do, sign and send you an amended agreement so that you go send me back? What have you done? What is happening? And what I want mostly, because we're going to level up in this media thing together. I want the media to be so on point that they could pick up these inconsistencies in the speech and be able to say, boy, I got a follow-up. I got several follow-ups. I was my brother. I will tell you, he's a liar. I would not be afraid to call him and let his face. I feel you. Many I tell you the lyrics from here today, I'm not saying a lie, but I can't say telling the full truth either. And I will also give room, because some people incompetent, something you don't know. So I just also give room for that.
Have committed funding. The only hold up on that funding now is that they have asked for a guarantee from the federal government. We have, of course, extended that request to Prime Minister Drew and the federal government. And I would just want the people of Nevis to understand that the only reason for the guarantee is what we call belts and braces. The only reason for it is because Nevis does not have the international standing.
Okay, let me learn something first of all tonight, because I don't see we start to reach into the heat now. No, first of all, I gain overtime. I need that to know that. I don't know what time I gonna finish, but I gain overtime. No, previously, my brother, when I say I can't say he lie, but he ain't saying the full truth. In this specific instance, I want you to know the premier lie with regards to what he talking about now. Ladies and gentlemen, and okay, let me lie, I understand specifically. What he's saying, a guarantor, and what he gonna continue dig the hole. I don't hear what he's saying. The guarantor thing is only basically a formality. Bells and whistles, I think he just called it. This is just to wrap up and make sure that we got the contract thing. Didn't they change where Nevis could now be sued? Sir, that is one of the things them. This is one of the things them what the media need to know. Stop let Mark Brantley tell you that that can't happen. Nevis got legal personnel, you know. Them man make laws to make sure that this could happen. And he keep on minimizing Nevis and making Nevis small. And saying they're not gonna stand in to do this and to do that. And that's why I want to explain to you what going on with this guarantor thing now. Now, if you have ever taken a loan, you are familiar with what I'm about to say. When you go for a loan, sometimes they say, well, we want somebody sign with you who guarantee the loan. No, when they sign with you who guarantee the loan, we acknowledge, and this is where I agree with the Premier, the primary responsibility of paying the loan back is going to be for Nevis people. You know? But that is not the reason why people just look at guarantor. The reason why you look at guarantor is because regardless of the circumstances, you want your money back. So it's not about, well, by bells and whistles and this and that. The Taiwanese government look at the NIA, see the NIA budget, see the NIA expenditure and say, in case they don't pay back the money, we need the government to sink it and Nevis on the hook. Because when we watch the sink it's budget now, we see $1 billion there. We see waves how the money could come back a little easier. So what he's speaking about there of this bells and whistles thing, no. And the reason why I could confidently tell you he lied, the Premier is an attorney by trade. The Premier understand the legal term of what is a guarantor. So he ain't gonna get to play stupid with that 1 year. And Mr. Premier don't give you a lot of big up and a lot of the good things. So you got to understand, a spade is only a spade. So this time you definitely lie.
To go and borrow on its own. And so we require a guarantee. But the responsibility for repayment lies 100% with Nevis. And the Taiwanese would have done their own analysis and found us creditworthy, and they have decided to lend us the money. But they have asked for their purposes to have that guarantee. We are working with the federal government on that. I think that went over since last year, late last year. So we are hopeful that once we can get past CARICOM and all of that, that we can get down to real business in the Federation and get that done and over.
Listen. This is the beginning of the labor and CCM fractures. Subtle shots is what you're dealing with. So when you're here, and we sent it down since last year, December. So that means since last year, December, them man got destiny and the airport a whole up. That's what that means. And then you hear the part, and let me get over CARICOM so we could get back down to the real business. Not in a sink it, the real business in a Nevis. That's the beginning. But it's only a small little crack in the pavement. You don't even realize you walk on them. Credit worthy, and you got a deficit budget every year, partner. He said the things what me say, but that's why this is why I'm telling you. He could say so with a nice demeanor, and the fact that he got on a suit and me got on, you understand? And me got in my beard and so he gonna seem like, well, he's calm and, you know, look at how he's delivering the information. But look on the rate of time he does be right and the rate of time he does be right.
For the line. So that is all we need right now, a signature to allow us to move forward. And I reiterate that this is no imposition on St. Kitts whatsoever. Every loan that the federal government has guaranteed for Nevis has been the responsibility of you and I, the NIA, and the people of Nevis to pay back. The drilling, the Destiny project, we are also waiting on that, Mr.
First of all, I want you to know I'm not an economist, but I do be paying attention. I'm trying to learn. What I would tell you is when you look at the budget and when you look at the debt that we have right now is basically double our the money that we bring in. And as you point out, we in a deficit nearly every year, so we just piling on. I don't know when it's gonna be 3 times the amount and 4 times the amount, but we just building a steady hole at this time.
George, we sent since the 23rd of December to the federal government indicating that after our own exhaustive stakeholder engagements and engagements with the general public, exhaustive engagements with the developers, the back and forth, that we finally had arrived at a position where we were comfortable, and we sent them that agreement asking, of course, for their sign-off because that is the scheme of the legislation. 23rd, yesterday, would have marked 2 months since that matter is now with Bastille, and we keep following up with them to say to them that we need a response. We have been concerned, and I say it now because it is true, that this project does not die due to neglect in Bastille. And I've said
from the very start of the year, the first thing I tell her is I don't feel like destiny gonna happen. I had to apologize. Soon as the big boss come and say, man, I don't say half that. You know? And you know, me and the red team good. And we gonna do what we gotta do. And that hasn't been the case thus far. And now we hear that the Premier is concerned that this is going to Bastille today. Another issue that we have spoken about is that I thought that even if the Premier support this legislation, he should have demanded that projects in Nevis will only require the approval of the NIA, whereas those in Singapore going to go under the federal government. The Premier decided that that is not something he wished to pursue. He loved the bill. He think that this is wonderful. And I mentioned at the time, this effectively gives Singits a veto on any action you may take. And I pointed out that that might be what might start this confusion. And here we are. Election next year, mine. Election next year. Then again, I think the debt was reduced by 3 million in this budget. So that's about 150 years clear.
that because this is a Nevis project. This project will unleash over $1 billion worth of investment. When I travel around Nevis now, the question that I get from people is, when is the project going to start? And we are being held up because Bastille needs to take their position in relation to it. So I say that so far as we are concerned, we've done the work. It is a Nevis project. The impact of it is largely going to be in Nevis in terms of any jobs and economic advancement. But Singkits will also benefit because economic development in one part of the country is also economic development in the whole of the country. But we are talking about multiple percent.
That argument about development in one part of the country mean is development happening all over the country. It does sound good, but it does not reflect the reality. The fact that Ramada built down Singkits, listen, me not even been no had Ramada down Singkit until me end up over there. Okay? Ramada down Singkit ain't gonna impact on me. It don't. And in the same way, you got things that will go on in a Nevis, not really gonna impact. We got to start to make politics local. Watch it. I would love if the Premier focus on locking and say, listen, I gonna build Nevis. but as St. John's people send me to represent them, I can build up St. John's. I feel like we would benefit from having some competition between the parishes and them. Because a poor Paul is such a fraud. I don't mind listening to him here. The fact that you're doing such a good counterintelligence job on him right now, enjoying this. So sit back and listen. I feel you. Thank you, man. And I hope you're here. There are moments in time when the premier does things. I've spoken about things where I like that I see. But regardless to what, a spade gonna be a spade.
Percentage expansion of our GDP. We're talking about significant jobs, thousands of jobs. We're talking about significant revenue generation. And just to give you an idea of how anxious people are, the recent numbers I saw said over 1,500 persons had already signaled their interest in working at Destiny. So even people now who already have jobs are telling me that as soon as they're ready, they're headed to Destiny in terms of their work. So there's
I just want to point out that when we spoke to Janssens, and so every time I have heard the Premier ask, there has been no clarity, specifically on the type of jobs. There's been some very general discussion, but there's not been any clarity. So 1,500 job, okay. When the Premier doesn't get his way, he cuss. Bye. Typical.
public expectation and anticipation that this is going to happen. The federal government has had it now for 2 months, and we're waiting on them patiently, bearing in mind that we have certain, how should I say, there are certain deadlines, because these individuals have to conclude certain things in terms of land purchases, certain financing arrangements.
Listen, hopefully I know. He get Destiny stats, bye. He know more stats about Destiny than he know about tourism and health. Just now, me not into conspiracy and them kind of thing. Like I really like need to see it to believe that the vibes going on in whatever specific way. Just now, the Premier specifically said, well, you know, we have timelines. We? Wouldn't it be Destiny is the one who got the money on the line being Janssens? Who is the we? Who is the we? Who got a deadline? Who finish up this thing? That's what I want to know about. That we thing, that we part there. Catch me.
That they have to conclude, and those deadlines are not going to be forever. Those deadlines are apparent. I've seen in Synkits that the federal government has appointed one committee, they say, to look at the SSZ. That really has nothing to do with this, because that committee can only propose amendments going forward. They've also said now that they've proposed some other committee to look at the Destiny agreement itself. Why, I'm not quite sure, because
okay. This now what I'm gonna express is just general frustration. Being, as I said, the Premier is an intelligent person. So like when Tulu say Premier is a fool, I know me not with that part. Okay? Premier is an intelligent man. I don't like the fact that I know what the committees them be and have been speaking about them, and the Premier is, talking about like, he don't really know. And he has like some kind of committee and another committee. So just to remind everybody, there's 2 committees. There's an ad hoc committee. An ad hoc just mean for the purpose of that is looking at legislation and any amendments that they want to make. That's one committee. The second committee is in this specific case looking at the review of the application in and of itself. So those are the two committees. The answer is hook, line, and sinker into robot taxis. Nevis taxis, the premier got solved for a while. Well, I want to say something. I just recently see them robot taxis, CG Gaskell, and I think we really need to we need to get into to them kind of rhythm there. The robot taxi, the autonomous vehicles. I hope that, and this is why I was speaking about AI too. We need to embrace that. Could you imagine you have an elder in maybe an isolated community, or maybe they don't have anybody who to look for them. They don't have any vehicle, that type of thing. If you had a robot taxi, you could let them know, hey, this thing gonna be out there for you, pick you up. Then I got to deal with maybe you deal with somebody who harassing, and you don't want to send nobody. So just on the robot taxi angle, man, I like that.
During the parliamentary debate, the understanding was that if it's a project on St. Kitts, then the Prime Minister would appoint an oversight body. If it's a project on Nevis, the expectation is that the Premier would appoint an oversight body, and I've already signaled, Mr. George, that I intend to do so. You asked who the members were. There are no members yet because that body has not yet.
The understanding what the Premier said that he get during the parliamentary debate, that's not the understanding I got. And that's not the understanding I get from the legislation either. And this is why I said it, and it looks like a veto, and it should have been challenged at the moment in time. All in the cabinet don't know what's going on. Who gonna get a robot taxi? But it sounds so slow. Honey, you gotta tell me if I said the word correctly, you know. When I say career. Did I say career? Oh my God, I don't know. This was about Posado, Career. I feel like it's Career.
Constituted, but I do intend to appoint the oversight body to deal with the implementation of the project. Recall that under the legislation that was passed, you can have an oversight body to do one of two things. One, to review a project, or two, to review the implementation of the project. We opted to, in Nevis, to look at the review for the...
Very important. Again, this is a very important statement. Very good tone, so it doesn't seem like anything is going on. The Premier is correct in his understanding. I agree with him. You could send up an oversight body to oversee the project itself or the application. Everything that is happening right now is setting a precedent. That does not mean that if one person do it, like I say, you got to stay so forever. But it does set a standard as to what we're going to look at from a procedural perspective. And everybody should be interested. Definitely investors will be interested in understanding, well, does it seem like Nevis is not going to have an oversight body for the applications, but St. Kitts is going to trend towards that? Does it seem like Nevis is more just concerned about the actual project itself? And the other questions are, who is in the room to articulate for persons who are not necessarily familiar with these different projects? Who is handing them the information for them to go through the review process? Basically, what you need to understand is the Premier saying is cabinet is the ones who reviewed this application and came to the decision that this is a good project to move forward with. I ain't hear him speak about any independent bodies or any impartial third parties giving them any information. So it seemed like he's saying they were given the application and cabinet itself make the decision. I personally do not feel like there is enough expertise in cabinet to do that. I feel like somebody should have at least, and I'm not ultimately saying cabinet, the decision should be taken away from them. I'm saying the oversight body, the function of the oversight body is to have persons who are familiar specifically with the type of project what you're dealing with, who could summarize and articulate the information in a simple way, so that persons who dealing with general duties will understand what is taking place. I don't think unless you come from certain things that you can understand what's going on in this field specifically, but that does not mean that you don't have the capacity or the ability to understand if it is broken down for you enough. And so it is something to pay attention to as far as the different avenues that are chosen. And right now, it seems as though the speed the speed at which it passed through the NIA was because it was considered by the cabinet. Another thing to consider, and this just come to my brain, think about how fast this application went through cabinet, and think about other reports and other applications and other decisions that does be before cabinet, and how long they take to consider those different applications, arguments, discussions. That's valid to pay attention to in what's taking place right now.
Implementation. That is to have a body in place that ensures that everybody's feet are held to the fire and that the project proceeds as planned. So that is where we are, but we have not yet activated that. My only effort in that regard as far as to write to the opposition, asking them to nominate, and both opposition members.
The criminal was hoping to get into his destiny. He says it seems like destiny is his final destiny. Same when Trump messed up in Iran. That's how he messed up with Banky. He's out of here, bye.
The Parliament would have written back to indicate their course of action, and so we have stayed our hands on that until we have greater clarity. But right now, Mr. George, we are waiting on sink kits. Federal government, that is where matters lie. And
investors have no worries. They have a guarantor. You better believe it. The guarantor is SK.
This project is waiting patiently to proceed once we can get some response from them. So I hope that I've addressed your various questions. Sure.
Just a clarification. February 19th, the Government Information Services say that the government has appointed an independent oversight body to pursuant to the laws of the Sustainable Development Act to oversee the Destiny project. And it states that on the 29th of January, it received a the application with the supporting documents was formally submitted by the Nevis Island Administration Cabinet to the Federal Cabinet on the 29th of January 2026.
Well, I don't know what it is they're saying, but I can tell you that we sent on the 23rd of December. Reason why it's important? Because I said let us get it out of the way before the Christmas and the Carnival celebrations take over. I didn't expect the federal government to do anything because I figured the boys would have been in Juve, but I said that let us get it out of the way. So the operative date that we have was the 23rd. What I can tell you, Mr. George, is that sometime in late January, the Attorney General did reach out to us, asking us to put the information in a particular format, which we then did. So I'm not sure if that's the date that they're using to say that that's when they got it. But I can tell you that they would have received communication from us on the 23rd.
I'm working on it, darling. Hopefully it's not too bad, but I'm working on it, darling.
Of December, attaching the version of the agreement that we were comfortable with. Bearing in mind that this agreement has now gone through probably almost 40 versions by now that we were comfortable with. So that is the position. So it may be.
The IOB appointed in SK met already. They were asked to sign NDAs. They refused, as far as I am aware. As I say, I've been keeping track. My understanding from what I heard from the AG is that they were supposed to begin meeting. Well, they are supposed to begin meeting from as early as tomorrow. He did indicate that there was a preliminary meeting. This may have been a meeting with the NDAs. So there was a preliminary meeting, but they have not gone in depth yet. As I'm speaking about this, one thing to note as well, when you look at the Premier saying that he does not know who the members of the Oversight Committee, this is malpractice. When you are the Premier of a country, part of your job is to be fast. Part of your job is to know everything where you be going on with people. That's part of the gig. And it's part of the gig because ultimately you will take care of everybody. So
that what they're pointing to is when they requested that the information be formatted in a particular way. And we did that, and that was resent to them sometime in January at their request. But they've actually had that information and that agreement since the 23rd of December. Any other questions for me?
Good morning, Premier.
Good morning.
Andre Huey, SKN Newsline and TVC Channel 40. Just some follow-up questions to the question that was asked earlier about Destiny. The press release that was issued by the government last week on the establishment of the ad hoc committee and the oversight body. It says that in accordance with the Act, the independent oversight body's mandate is to examine the application and provide written opinions to the federal cabinet on matters including compliance with the mandatory statutory prerequisites, the developer's financial, organizational, and technical capacity, economic projections, governance implications, and environmental and fiscal risk exposure. Now, in light of that, one, do you anticipate that this will further delay the project? And you're saying that you don't understand why the government would do this. According to what they're saying this is according to the Act. We need to have this independent oversight body to advise the federal government. And two, was there anything in the consultations that you had, the NIA had on Island, that would prompt the NIA or the government to look at certain changes to the legislation? In other words, concerns that may have been raised that you consider legitimate concerns that maybe should be looked at in adjusting the legislation going forward. Those two for now.
Okay. So the short answer is if you look at the legislative requirement in that act, and I was there during the parliamentary debate, I supported that bit of legislation. It does not mandate anything. It says may. That's the first thing. So it means that the federal government has chosen to put this committee in place. Same way that I have said that I will put that committee in place. But they have chosen to put a committee
Oh shit! I feel you. Yeah, I had to mute it because the dogs was going crazy. The what I'm saying. Yeah, I apologize. I'm supposed to be back now. As I said, the dog and them been back, and so I had to get rid of them. So, bye. Hold on. I might go back. I may have to go back slightly to hear my code. I don't want to go back so far.
That you can put a committee in place to look at the proposal or to look at its implementation. So we in Nevis have said we will put a committee in place to look at the implementation since the Nevis project, right? So a lot of the issues here are really, in my opinion, choices that are being made, and those choices, you're absolutely correct, will lead to delays. Because if you're going to appoint a committee, and that the intention of that committee is to advise you on all these manner of things, the committee needs time. And whilst you are appointing committees and waiting on committees to advise, what's happening is the clock is running on financial and commercial commitments that have been made.
Okay. Yeah, I remember what I've been saying now. And what I'm saying is this. The Premier had already agreed. And I was saying, you could tell him bank your partner. Can you hear them argue whether the legislation says shall or may, you know, whether it's mandatory or whether it's at your discretion. And by the way, if you tell anybody it's at their discretion, they ain't gonna do it. Ain't happening. The Premier had already agreed that he's gonna set up the committee, the Oversight Committee. And he has said that he feel like it should be mandatory. And at the very first opportunity he get to do, so this is gonna set the example for how we're gonna do this. The Premier chose not to set up the oversight committee where he said he gonna set up. We don't need no oversight for the review process because I have all the sense. You might get the dollars, but me got all the sense. We don't need that. We only need a committee to make sure that the process is being carried through. I would argue that we need both. I just feel like we need both. It would be more solid to do it in that manner. It would help to take away at least the notion, build another block between you and the perception of conflict of interest. So, like that aspect.
So Destiny, for example, would have said, well, listen, we are buying this 100 acres of land, for the sake of argument, and the deadline for closing, we've already paid deposits and all that. The deadline for closing is, let's say it's March 15th, just drawing a reference. If that is a deadline, then any delays that pushes you past that now creates commercial problems. Because if you can't meet those deadlines, it either means that those contracts go away, or you have to renegotiate those contracts. And so it injects commercial uncertainty. And why I'm saying that I am a little, confused by this is, obviously this is a Nevis project. Nevis has a government. And the Nevis government has engaged extensively. Mr. Huey, we have met with the Chamber, the Bankers Association, the churches, the youth, the teachers, the truckers, the hoteliers, the police high command, the parliamentary opposition. We have met with the Honorable Attorney General as a cabinet. We had a general town hall meeting. And in answer to your second question, any issues are absolutely. Each time we met, we took back concerns that were raised, and we had those addressed in terms of our negotiations. Well, if the people of Nevis have elected a government to take care of their needs, and the government of Nevis has been able to attract a significant investment to Nevis, that even the naysayers have to admit that it will advance this island in a significant way, perhaps a way that we have not seen since the coming of the Four Seasons in terms of a private investment. Yes, the government has been spending. Yes, the government has been investing. We see the roads and the water taxi, and we see all of those things, the Mondo track that the government has done. But in terms of private sector investment, I think that it is clear that with the impending demise of citizenship by investment, we need alternatives. We need alternatives. I have just seen some numbers there from revenue for the CBI, and the numbers are now, I mean, to say paltry might not even be the appropriate word. So this is a Nevis project. The people of Nevis will ultimately have the decision to make at something that we have here very regularly called an election as to whether they agree with the direction that the government has taken or not. But that is a question for the people of Nevis. If this...
Make sure I'm in a mute. The number is significantly higher than $15 million.
project is held up to the point in Sinkits where it dies a natural death, then what do we say to the people of Nevis? What do we say to the 300 young people who have just come out of 6th form and 5th form, CSS and GSS, who are looking work? What am I going to tell them? Go to Sinkits to find out if they could find work over there? These are some of the challenges of this Twin Island Federation. Because, Mr. Huey, you're going to reverse it now. If this project were on St. Kitts, the people of Nevis would have no say. The NIA, the Premier, the Cabinet would have no say in whether that project moves forward. So ask yourself that question. Ask yourself that question. How is it that a project for Nevis can be held up with committee after committee in St. Kitts?
Yeah, I'm going to cut back in and let my goat say what he got to say. But why, how come I saw this and thought that this was problematic? I feel like the Premier need a wider span of opinions around him, because this was something during the debate that should have been brought up as a major issue. To the extent that this bill don't pass, whether or not the Premier supported him, it would be better to say, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm going to support you if you take out the part this or so. But to support it now and then come and say, well, I didn't know that that's how that read. That's how I read it. It's English.
But if the project were just 2 miles away on the Southeast Peninsula, the people of Nevis and the government would have no input whatsoever. You remember there's a project called Christopher Harbour? Who asked the people of Nevis whether they wanted Christopher Harbour? Christopher Harbour closer to Nevis than it is to Bastia.
Yeah, I forget to read the thing. 3/4 of those meetings resulted in a written no. So why he's still pushing forward? There are 50 million reasons. Oh yeah, that's when we had responded. So the number is significantly higher than 15 million. The reason why he continued to list out the different groups that he spoke with is because those participants are being used. So the Premier operate on a type of checklist mentality, so that when he is going to present something to you, there are always these. So he going to say, and look at this, and look at that, and look at that. So all of those different groups was simply to compile a checklist so that regurgitated over time. I mean, we've seen it for the last couple of months. It's going to be spoke to the teachers, spoke to the 6 farmers. All of those different things were just so that he could come back and say, look how exhaustive. And he used that specific word. When you hear the word exhaustive, that means I went to the ends of the earth. So that's my perspective on that.
Nobody asked us. And so that is the sometimes when we talk about the country and how the country needs realignment in terms of how we think, that's part of it. Because you have no say in what happens in St. Kitts. Zero. But St. Kitts can determine how fast, how far Nevis goes. That's why Nevis has an NIA. The people of Nevis have trusted the NIA, and I'm not making a party political comment here. I'm making a...
I think me and you talking about the same thing. I feel like you're adding on extra, whereas me don't calculate the exact amount of grease. But if you feel like that, I will get it done. Okay, you know.
Constitutional and democratic comment. The people of Nevis have chosen a government, whether it's NRP, CCM, or who. And that government is who the people of Nevis have reposed trust and confidence in to run their affairs. So if they say they want a chicken farm, and there is controversy or dispute over the chicken farm, then it is for the people of Nevis to decide that controversy at an election. And I have been very, very clear about these things.
Which mean that simply the Destiny Project. It seems like both parties are embracing this as a major election issue. So the party who will articulate the best vision for the South Coast apparently is going to get some kind of boost in the election.
Collaboration is critical. Collaboration is critical. But the same way Nevis cannot stand in the way of St. Kitts' development, St. Kitts equally should not be able to stand in the way of Nevis' development. We should look at the country as a whole and respect the authorities that exist in the country and respect the constitutional authority of our people when they say, listen, this is who I elect because I have confidence in them. Right? So we have gone through this process from August of last year until December.
Smart. What I want to say is with regards to the constitutional aspects of this, we have very unique laws, a very unique setup. And in our setup, the island of Nevis can choose that an act does not apply to it in certain circumstances. Clearly, by accepting this act, and not only not accepting it, by supporting this act and helping to usher it into being, this act applies to the NIA, to the people of Nevis. Listen, I know what to say again, but you can't support the thing that I've been saying, man, at least this aspect here, so this is a problem. I've been talking about different ways how this thing could be strengthened now. So it's not like it's been an entire takedown. I'm just talking about how this thing could be proper. Those groups are referred to as the social partners. Huh?
August, September, October, November, December, almost 5 months. All that occupied us as a cabinet, not all, but a significant part of what occupied us was this project. We examined it, we discussed, we met, and you hear all the stakeholders we met with. That had nothing to do with people who sent private communication, like the Nevis Historical and Conservation Society sent something, right? So we had exhaustive engagements. No project in this country has ever attracted that level of public engagement. And now we're at a stage now where people are saying, listen, I met with a young fellow on Saturday. I had lunch with a young man. And he said that he and another gentleman have already identified some heavy equipment that they want to purchase. People who are forward-looking and entrepreneurial are already trying to ready themselves for this. So the chap said they already identified some equipment that they want to purchase. All we're waiting for is for a green light. And that is what I'm saying, because if St. Kitts has the capacity to say to Nevis, you cannot have a particular development on Nevis, then it would seem to me only just and right that Nevis has the capacity to say to St. Kitts, you cannot have a certain development in St. Kitts. And we know that that can happen.
Okay, well, it feels to me like if this destiny thing don't get signed, this now gonna be this gonna be used against Labor for whatever the concerned citizens movement got planned next. And the only party I see what CCM could join with at this moment in time is PAM. Because PAM is weak. I don't feel like Labor would do it. So
the local people say fowl would grow teeth before that happened. So if that is the case, let us respect each other. Let us respect the fact that the people of Nevis have put people, competent people in authority to make decisions to advance this island and let the country move forward. That's what we need to do. So I am being very, very clear as to my approach, and I think that the country needs to understand the roles and the responsibilities, and we cannot have development on this island of Nevis being held up, being stymied, being delayed, and potentially being lost because of delays, right, on St. Kitts. That is really something that we need to avoid at all costs in order to allow us to move the country forward and to see the development. When you build your second pier at Port Zante, you had Kittitian Hill, you had Ramada, you had Marriott, you had Park Hyatt, you had no Christoph Harbour, you know, you propose now, was it a Ritz-Carlton? Nobody in Nevis, not one of us, has the potential to say stop, has the potential to say we don't agree. St. Kitts can develop St. Kitts, so why can't Nevis develop Nevis? Any other questions for me?
I will understand. The last thing was anecdotal statements and research. And this one is PAM is the strongest party in SK today. In your dream, you wish PAM was the strongest party in SK.
We'll have a follow-up to
Sure.
the Destiny question. The provision or the section in the Act that allows for the independent oversight body to be established, which you clearly pointed out, is optional, is actually ironically, one of the issues that some people have with that part of the legislation. They believe that should be compulsory. It shouldn't be
and
optional.
I agree.
Yes.
So for the record,
Okay.
I forgive me because I made a mental note that I agree that it should say shall.
Right.
Okay, we come to another. This might be a record. This is the first time I'm gonna do it twice in the same show. Lies. Strongest. Strongest on the outside the government. So the premier now come back and say, and big up Mr. Journalist for coming with a follow-up to that and pointing out that this has been an issue that people have been speaking out and saying, why is this not mandatory? This is one of the issues. And before I go on there too, he answer the question with regards to he asked him, are there any issues you see with the legislation that need to be fixed? He not see no issues. He ain't got none. The only issue right now is can't get away. And that's an issue. God, he didn't read it like how we read it and how other people was reading it. Now the lying part come in now when the premier said, but yeah, I believe that this should be mandatory. And how we measure integrity is by, will you do the right thing when nobody is watching? Hold on, let me see what it says. You all notice he was complaining about Christoph Harbour before. Got wonder if he was paid to be quiet. In fact, when he opened that mouth, everybody should hear him. See how broad that mouth is. When the premier is saying that, but he agree, this thing should be mandatory. When you are looking at somebody's integrity, you got to look at the fact that, will they cheat if nobody watch? Supporters will be going back to vote, Pam. They realize the grass is not green on the other side. Why? Pam ain't got enough supporters, and Pam does not have a sense of their political identity. This is all in my estimation. I feel like Pam and NRP, by the way, are plagued by a lot of the same issues. So that's what make me say that. But anyway, I get me off of this year, you know. The lying part. Yeah. The lying part in this aspect of saying, but I feel like it should be mandatory. And when you're testing people integrity and all that kind of thing there. If the premier felt like it should be mandatory, he should have made it mandatory and gone through the process. There would not be any discussion of, well, it's a man, this, and we have elected. There would be no election. In a need, no election. You agree that it should be mandatory? The only other follow-up what Huey should have asked is, well, Mr. Premier, if you feel like this thing should have been mandatory, why in this case, the very first instance when we're going through this legislation, didn't you take use of this mechanism to get people to go in there? I love when they follow up, but sometimes they need to, the follow-up also needs to follow. You see that? Honey, you're with me. You realize what's going on. Sometimes you got to even follow up the follow-up. Let me tell you some high responsibilities to keep these people here honest enough and to extract information for the public. You ain't capable government. You're trying to get to the truth at all moments in time. So this here, don't buy what is going on. Anyway, I have no confidence in no political party in SK. None have Nevis interest at heart. Well, this is why Nevis need to come up with a strategy to work with the governments in SK. One of the things why I feel like we need to do is after SK government, but nobody has studied me. One of these days, somebody gonna study me and they're gonna come by me and ask me, Alan, how are we gonna get in the government? And why are we gonna get in return? Because there's things to get as well.
Not me. So I agree that that should be compulsory, but currently it is not.
Okay, so that answers that question. However, and I know you just did an ad hoc list of entities that you met with, but one of the entities I didn't hear you mention, maybe you did and was an oversight, was the Bar Association, because they issued a statement expressing concerns about the act. I'm just going to read just a small paragraph of their press statement that they issued. They said essentially that the act should be fundamentally restructured to eliminate the adverse consequences to democracy and the rule of law and the existing.
Imagine Mark Brantley thought that's how the legislation being crafted. Yet he is the chief negotiator for Destiny. And he thought somebody brighter than him. And he thought nobody brighter than him. What? You will never get that due to the goat, sir. You can't fool the goat.
Laws of the country. And to the rights of the people, and to focus its provisions strictly on promoting economic development. And they've listed some other things. But that essentially describes the essence of their statement. They have concerns about the legislation. Right. Now, did the NIA have a chance to meet with the Bar Association to address this?
We did not meet with the Bar, and the Bar did not say anything to us about anything to do.
Okay. Listen, there's so many subtle changes. So what I need to understand now, how you know that you're a Mark Brantley vex is that before you get to finish YBUSA, he done got an answer. And you don't get all of the technical answer is no, you'll get a straight up, no. And so right now, we in the stage of the dog fight. We in the stage of the dog fight where it's hub. Yeah, that's the rhythm what we're dealing with right now. Mr. Huey has poked the bear. And it is very important to note, Mark Brantley, a liar by trade, did not think to meet with the Bar Association to know if the Bar Association had any concerns with the legislation and all this type of thing. Do you think that was a wise decision not to meet with his former colleagues?
With this, the Bar opted to write to the federal government, I assume, in terms of what they consider to be their concerns. But Mr. Huey, I just want to make it clear that this is a democracy that we live in. And it is not unusual for people or organizations to have concerns. We were once talking about a development there, and people had major concerns about Lovers Beach. They said turtles nest there. And so pointing out that people have concerns is really, for me, important, because it's an important exercise in listening to what the people and various stakeholder groups have to say. But it is not determinative of whether one moves forward with a particular project.
Me don't know why the elders in our life teach I, but the elders in me life teach me. When people say something and then put in a but, whatever they say before the but. Listening to people is important, but that doesn't determine the issue.
Not because while lawyers may be concerned about the provisions that they don't like in a particular law, they have not yet said that those provisions are unconstitutional. So,
okay, I'm about to take on Mark Brantley in a legal perspective, so wish me luck. My understanding of the law is it couldn't be challenged until it came out. So I think now that it's out, it could be challenged. I think now, certainly like with the Destiny thing going on, it could be challenged. The second thing I would say is, well, it come back to, I guess it come back to the first thing. Why is there this selective thing? How come the premier is never aware of adverse situations? The premier never hear that anybody have a complaint. He always just hear great stuff. And I want to tell the premier, that's why I feel like you need a diversity of opinions around you. it is important, for example, that you sit down every Monday night, 7 o'clock, and you watch this show from start to end. Because at least you're gonna have one person in your life who gonna just tell you. That's how you go. Wide or not wide. LBW or not LBW. But you seem like you got people in your life and they are not able to reflect and tell you the public having issues with this aspect or that aspect. The premier never hear. People was complaining. I didn't know. To you? Not to me.
I may say I don't like the idea that a judge has a right to be both judge and jury, and we abolish jury trials, because that offends some sensibility that I have. But unless I can go on to say that that provision is unconstitutional or otherwise illegal, then what is the point of my commentary other than just giving my opinion?
The difference is here within the, and once again, I'm taking on the premier in legal terms. Wish me all the best. The Constitution gives you the right to a fair trial. It's not even a fair trial. But the Constitution doesn't specifically list like that you got to be like in front of jury and so, you know. So I think this is a false equivalency. In my estimation, this is a false equivalency. So I don't see it 100. I do understand what he's trying to say, though. But nah.
And that is the point, because I've not heard yet anybody say that this provision or that provision is unconstitutional. They have simply said that they don't like this, they would prefer that. Well, we understand that. But lawyers are there to interpret the law. The courts are there to apply the law. And parliamentarians are there to make the law. And so we have our roles to play. And so what I did not see in the Bar Association.
Okay, he 1,000% wrong in another one. They may not even got to give no caveat on that. The court is responsible for the interpreting the law. That's just he ain't been in the mix for a while, so maybe he just forget about that one. But no, that's incorrect, sir.
Commentary was any suggestion that any aspect of the law was unconstitutional. I didn't see that. If you saw that, well, you could correct me. And so the rest is just in the realm of opinion. They have an opinion. They say they would prefer this and they would prefer that and they prefer the other. I saw something recently that came from some committee, and the suggestion was that the government should have nothing at all to do with these zones. They should be put in the hands of some private, not private, but some entity that is put in place, independent entity that will look at these. And I think, Mr. Huey, part of all that we have going on here is that this is new. It's not new to the world, but it's new to us. And so you're finding people having a reaction to the fact that it's new to us. But if you look at the DIFC in Dubai, the Dubai International Financial Center, we look at zones that have been created across the globe. Jamaica's had them since as early as, what, the 1960s or 70s. We look at what applies in Cayman. This is an iteration of it. When the Citizenship by Investment program came in 1984, some lawyers were also of the view that this is wrong and we shouldn't have this. But at the end of the day, the program not only has existed, it has contributed significantly to the well-being of everybody, including those lawyers. So the members of the bar who are saying that they have concerns, you know, they can and are free to express their concerns, but until they go to the point that they say that these provisions are unconstitutional, we're in the realm of opinion rather than something that I think should impact in a significant way the deliberations, because those who are commenting, and that's why I keep saying, you know, whether you're in opposition, you're in some stakeholder group, and you're commenting, you have a luxury, Mr. Huey, that I don't have. And the luxury that you have is commentary without consequence. You could say anything you feel like. When you're in government, there are consequences of making decisions and equally consequences of not making those decisions. And when I looked at those graduation ceremonies that I saw happening in Nevis, I want to be able, as Premier Nevis, to say to those young people, you have opportunity here in Nevis. Marco Ruby, I'm told, is going to be in
Plague and conflict of interest, in fact, worries rather a lot of people. Iterations, special economic zone have special economic activities tied to them. What are the economic activities in Destiny? Well, I've been asking this question. I am very disappointed that it seems like the Premier is telling us that this is just basically real estate. It seems like it's just gonna be an expansion. He speaks about it being four seasons. I have argued that we actually should use this space for production. There should be some kind of aspect where we training people gaining skills. We are producing something actually. This feels like we're doing tourism plus. And at the very same time, he advocates for diversity in the economy. So my argument for what I would like to see in Destiny is more of that aspect. I haven't heard him speak about any digital work that they're gonna be doing over there. I've heard people talking about mining and so, but nobody even know nothing about like the server space what we're gonna need and the computer and all them things. So I don't take that seriously. But you do ask a legitimate question as far as what type of economic activity is gonna be taking place. I do not feel like 4 seasons is drastically improve economic activity. But more people could be waitresses, bartenders, etc. I suppose.
I think it's today or tomorrow. America is saying that they're cracking down on us as immigrants. And I say us because we shouldn't be shy about saying it for what it is. It's people who look like us are going to be under pressure. And I'm saying to the people of Nevis, the government of Nevis has a responsibility to provide opportunities for you here at home. And so those who are out there protesting and objecting, it is because there's no consequence for what they do. One fellow reached out to me and he said, I don't agree with the Destiny project. I'm going to fight it. And I said to him, well, okay, what alternatives do you suggest for me at this point? Because I have young people, I have university graduates coming home. How do we fit them into Nevis so they could have meaningful work and have opportunities? And he told me that's your problem. And I told him I agree with you, but I agree with him. It is my problem, and so if it's my problem, let me solve my problem. Because you have the benefit of opinion without consequence. I need, in my position, to make decisions that have consequences and that have, hopefully, beneficial consequences for the people of Nevis. And anybody who stands up here and says that everybody's going to agree is not telling you the truth. Because even good things people fight against. You know, they say some people fight against their own self-interest. That happens. So we just have to keep moving. And as I said, a lot of these issues, Mr. Huey, I decided at the ballot box. Right? And that's a place where I'm very comfortable. So if people want to make noise, make noise. Go out, do what you need to do. Say what you need to say. Let us have the election. And we will determine at that election what the position is. It's simple. That's why we live in a democracy. You can't have it some of the times and don't like it the rest of the times. Like it all the time. Good. What else you have?
I don't mean to hog the mic, but just
yes.
another quick follow-up on that. And you're right, the Bar Association has not explicitly said in their statement, and I'm looking at it now, that there are constitutional concerns in terms of the law breaking the Constitution. But they do have concerns that there are, for example, executive power that is given to developers within the zone that they believe belongs, and based on the Constitution, belongs to the NIA and the federal government. So in light of that and other concerns, I don't know, does the NIA have any plans to meet with the Bar Association to address any of their concerns in that statement and otherwise?
Well, the legislation is federal. So perhaps because of that, the Bar Association didn't think that it was necessary to say anything to us. They didn't even send us a copy of that. I read about it in the press. So, interesting enough, I think the president of the Bar Association is from Nevis. But they didn't think that we were worthy enough to get a copy. So, if they want to meet, I'm always available to meet. But if they want to communicate via the press.
This next statement is not unique to CCM. If you in politics, you got to be fast. Me can copy of that thing there on my phone. I've been reading that there as this show going on. You can't just be like, man, me read about it in the press. You got to go and hold team out there and tell you, hey, I want you to be scraping. And then you need people to determine, okay, all right, is this valid information? Yeah or no? And then you need somebody to formulate and farmers and all them things there. And then you got the information to you. I don't feel like you will go through everything. But you're supposed to got some kind of filter, man. If I have to confront Mark Brantley, I would have told him $6 million is not a little bit of money. Bring back some of the money you got hidden that could deal with the situation you are in. I am not familiar with the $6 million. But me assure Mark ain't got just 6 million. If you say 60.
Then we see what they have to say via the press. But again, absent them saying that something is unconstitutional, they are giving an opinion. We had some excellent opinions from our 6 farmers as well. We had excellent opinions from the church. We had excellent opinions from a wide cross-section. The Bar
Why is it that the standard for the Bar Association is that unless the Bar Association say that this is unconstitutional, that not no evidence is a valid concern? Is this an individual who is really trying to be out there and listen to people and understand what is taking place?
Association is no different to a cross-section because, as I said, they have not up to now said what aspects of this are unconstitutional. They're merely saying what they would like to see. And I'm pretty sure if you poll them separately and independently, each one of them will tell you they'd like to see something different. Again, the luxury of opinion without consequence.
This is incorrect. This is why they put out an actual statement saying these are the things what come out, what we see as an issue.
And lastly on this issue, and I think this question was asked at the last press conference, I just want to sort of get your ventilation on it. Possible constitutional challenges or legal challenges to the legislation itself that could potentially delay the project. Are you concerned that someone or a group of people could file a suit to challenge the constitutionality of the legislation?
We live in a democracy. Just as I think there was a question earlier about the government being sued, anybody can sue anybody. And there are enough lawyers running around now looking for work that, you know, believe me, it's not hard to find somebody to file a suit. In fact, you don't even need a lawyer.
You're going to go tell me about the 600 million.
To do it. You can do it yourself. So, is there a possibility? Yes. But I think if you were to go to serious lawyers with a serious matter, those lawyers have an obligation to advise you as to whether or not your matter has some prospect of success. And I feel, having looked at this, I don't see what the constitutional difficulties are. As I said, it is new to us. There's a high degree of hysteria that has been generated by people for their own political purposes. And I think that hysteria has seeped in to some of what.
This is the Bar Association what we're talking about now, man. Everything can be politics. This is the Bar Association. Every group who you don't meet with cannot be automatically, or they have their political ends where them are trying to meet. And even if they have them political ends, everybody got political ends. If you ain't got political ends right now, you better try to get some. You better get a political vision of how you want to see things moving forward. Because when you want your road fixed, when you want the cost of living go down, when you want better health care, when you want better teaching, when you want better transportation, no politics. It's only two things you could deal with in life that ain't involve politics. Two single, and that's it.
People are saying and thinking. You know what I think I found about this? Everybody is saying what these people think and what they believe. I read something where they said 10 years ago that this is what they believe. And I have simply said, but that no such proposal is in front of me as government. Right? So I am not entirely certain how to respond to that. And I've asked the question rhetorically many times, do any of us in Nevis know what Bill Gates believes? But we know he owns Four Seasons. So if we were to find a paper that he...
Say that one how long more. What's up, bro? Tell me something since oh my, but off topic, but that's a cute baby behind you. But yeah, bro. Let me make a more. Let me see how we that look like that Ruby. Yeah, that look like a Ruby. Did it, I think. I'm gonna try to get that last post will come up there so I could read that.
wrote 10, 15 years ago, saying he has a particular belief, then we should say, well, you can't invest in Nevis. We must look, in my opinion, as what is proposed. And that is something that I have looked at because I am not, again, afforded the luxury of hysteria. I can't respond to everything by way of emotion. Those are people whose decisions have no consequences, whose opinions have no consequences. My decisions have consequences once I'm in this position. And I must therefore conduct myself in a way that looks at the facts, looks at what is before me, and make a best judgment for the benefit of my people. That's what has to happen, and that is my role as Premier of Nevis. That's the role of any leader, in my opinion. Any other questions for me?
Good morning, Elke Hewlett, Department of Information. Does the NIA have any plans to bring back home students from Cuba in light of what is happening there? Have you, as Premier of Nevis, been invited to any of the meetings taking place during the overarching CARICOM Heads of Government meeting being held this year in Basse-Terre from February 24th to 27th? Also, against that backdrop, do you have any expectations from the meeting of the CARICOM heads with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio? The NIA recently started construction on a Bureau of Standards facility. Can you explain the role and or function of such a facility here on Nevis? And finally, there's been a lot of chatter about a possible early federal election and potential coalitions among various parties in St. Kitts, as well as between St. Kitts and Division parties. Is your CCM party prepared to join with any party on St. Kitts and on Nevis for that matter? Thank you.
Hold on, I need to pause. I need to pause to the commenter that made that statement. I need to read the statement again. And they say, policies are political. Being partisan is another thing. And that is what you must understand. The scheme what we're operating in, you got to deal with politics in a way of running away with it. If because somebody for you or somebody who you like is running and you feel like you can't criticize them, at that moment in time that you become partisan and nobody ever believe nothing what you say. Cause you're not got nothing critical. Them are God. So I just want to highlight that statement. That's why I'm talking about with the politics aspect. Next one is they will be running the Destiny project to the CBI program. The $100 they are offering citizens shouldn't think it to get some of that as well. My understanding is that Sinki's people are going to get the $100 to you. If you watch the second video, I'm not. I don't know if you know about the second video, you know, Mr. Jones, but in the second video, a lot of Sinkits people are in that video, and my understanding of that is because they wanted to appeal to the Sinkits people so that Dr. Joe would be like, okay, we're gonna do this. I don't believe the Honorable Timothy Harris was being untruthful when he said 600 million was given to the premier. Then he had to come back and say he is a bad spender. I would say he is a thief. Well, that's your perspective, sir. You know, that's your opinion. I don't even remember at this point what the particular figure is. I just feel like the majority of the money that was given to the premier was used for paying salaries. So I don't really hot up my head too tense with certain things. I don't be okay.
Well, this is a press conference of the Premier of Nevis, not the CCM press conference, but since you want to bait me, I'll allow myself to be baited. Cuban students, we have not yet had any requests from our students studying in Cuba that things have got to a point where they need to come out. In fact, I reported that I met just yesterday with a student when I mentioned the ophthalmologist. She's actually studying in Cuba, and I did ask her that question. And she said that while things had become more difficult, that the approach that most of them had was they really wanted to finish. Because to leave now would really mean that they have invested all these years and not completed their course of study. So we are monitoring the situation. We're in touch with them, but so far we have not had any such indication. Invitations to CARICOM meetings, the answer is no. I have been invited to the opening ceremony that CARICOM is having. I believe that is sometime this afternoon. And that is the extent of what I have been invited to as Premier of Nevis. What do I expect to come out of CARICOM heads meeting and with Marco Rubio? Short answer is I really don't know, Ms. Hewlett. I don't know, and I don't want to speculate, but I'm hopeful that the conversation would take place in a spirit of Caribbean unity. That what we've seen played out recently of CARICOM leaders shouting at each other across the Caribbean Sea.
Why is Mark frustrated? Just like how he said last week, Wednesday, he will stop clearing the ground for Monkey to run, and he should realize a Sinkits Manju will block the Destiny project and Nevis. Well? I feel like Mark Brantley should join Labour right now.
That will be quelled, and that what we would have is a disciplined approach to dealing with the United States and others as a Caribbean community. And so I'm hopeful, whether through Carla Barnett, the Secretary General, or through the Chair, Prime Minister Drew, that there will be clarity of expression, clarity of thought, and clarity of purpose. But whatever we do, I think we need to articulate the view that we stand together as the Caribbean. And I believe that Secretary of State Rubio should leave with a clear understanding that the Caribbean is united. And if that were to come out of the meeting, I would be very happy. If that were the only result, I would be very happy that we are united in our position. So I'm very happy to see that the Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister is here. We recognize that there was some friction that was developing, but The fact that she has come, and I want to give some credit to Prime Minister Drew. He has been criticized for the approach, but he has flown around the region to meet with CARICOM heads in advance of the heads meeting. And I believe that that no doubt would have contributed to those CARICOM heads accepting the invitation to come for the heads.
Mark is slipping. Just like you observed outside of his legal expertise, he may be lacking in other areas. Maybe why the project's failing and the money is being mismanaged. This is my estimation. I feel like the premier biggest weakness is he does not know what he does not know. And that could be a problem.
Meeting, because it would have been, I think, a disaster if you had a CARICOM heads meeting in St. Kitts and some of the heads chose to stay away. So the fact that, based on what I'm hearing, most of the heads are going to be here, perhaps vindicates his approach in flying around and speaking to them individually, which he has done. So I'm not going to join those who criticize him for that, because I think that that has certainly looks like it's bearing fruit, and we see Prime Minister Bissessar and others who are here. So we welcome that, but I am not prepared to wager on what may come out of it. I'm just hopeful that Caribbean unity is preserved. Bureau of Standards building, Ms. Hewlett, the Bureau of Standards really deals with testing for a number of things. For example, when you buy your fuel at the pump, they are the ones who test to make sure that the fuel has the requisite percentages of whatever it should have in. That is not watered down, that somebody's not selling you fuel and stretching it with water, for example. Or when you have food, they would test the quality of the food coming in, your chicken, your whatever. And that's going to be critically important for us, especially now we're talking about a broiler industry. Who's going to test the chicken to make sure that it's, you know, WHO standard? You know, water testing is currently done through our lab at the water department, but even that I'm sure that they could assist with. But they also do things like weights and balances. So when you go to some place and they tell you this is 10 pounds, how do you know it's 10 pounds? They put it on a scale, right? So all that the Bureau of Standards does to calibrate, to make sure that that is important. So it's a very important initiative. St. Kitts has a Bureau of Standards, and the idea is to do one here as well. Early federal elections, and parties are talking about coalition. God bless them. We are not talking about any coalition in the CCM, Ms. Hewlett. We are doing the people's work. And when you do the people's work, you're doing God's work. That's what we are about. And when the time comes, we will go to the people of Nevis. And we have one simple question for them when it comes. Who do you trust to responsibly, maturely, and sensibly take care of the affairs of Nevis? And I think when shaped in that way, framed in that way, there's only one party in Nevis that people can trust, and that's the Concerned Citizens Movement. Right?
I apologize once again. I was saying that you have to watch my premiere and watch it. Well, first of all, you will listen to what he said. Whether we'll spend money on extending the airport runway, American Eagle was landing on that runway already. It only needs to be resurfaced. I believe I'm back now. With regards to the American Airlines thing, there was also an issue with the American Airlines in that they couldn't come in as soon as sunset. And when you think about the fact that Plus the Millionaire Landing is playing there already, what happened with the American Airline thing is that when you think about winter time, sun going down in Nevis 5 o'clock, 5:30 if things good with you, it cut down on the amount of flights YB you could get in as well. Hurricane Hill, if Hurricane Hill was 2 miles in any other direction, we in business. But unfortunately, it is where it is.
You don't throw away good things for bad things. You stick with what you have, you stick with what you know, you stick with what has been proven, and I am not here suggesting that we're perfect, but even on a bad day, we're far better than what is on offer on the other side. Far better. So I feel that simple question is what we will go to the people of Nevis with, and I am hopeful that the people of Nevis will continue to stick and stay with the party that has brought them progress, the party that has brought them stability, and the party that has demonstrated that it is by far the best party to lead this country. And the people of
Which mean, people of Nevis, if you vote against Mark Brantley, this could be the end of his career, you know? Because you hear what his question is? He gone back to NRP settings. The manifesto only got in one question, who do you trust? And you're going to see Mark up there smiling, and you're going to melt.
Nevis know that, Monsieur Let. I did analysis the other day, and in the last 18 elections in this country, CCM has won 14. The NRP has won 3. And the NRP
CCM win 14 election, NRP win 3. But guess who does get the blame?
is, they won, no, 3? The NRP won 1 in 1987, I think.
That we must forge new relationships and develop new norms among ourselves, even as we seek to develop new relationships and new norms with the great and the middle powers. Can you explain the rationale behind those comments? Thanks.
So those comments, Ms. Hewlett, were framed in a broader context. We had a speech from Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, at Davos, where he basically said that there was a death, if you will, of the rules-based order in the world. And that middle powers, he described Canada as a middle powers, they now needed to coalesce around a set of principles that would guide them going forward. We heard then the Chancellor of Germany, Mr. Merz, Friedrich Merz, I think his name is. He gave a speech at the Munich Security Conference just, I think, 2 weeks or so ago. And he said something alarmingly similar. And in my opinion, these big countries to us, Canada and Germany, are describing themselves as middle powers. They have announced the death of the rules-based order. Now, the rules-based order is what protected us. The rules-based order is what allowed small countries like St. Kitts and Nevis to go to the UN General Assembly and to have a voice to stand up, and our Prime Minister, Foreign Minister,
Push down Hurricane Hill into the ocean and shorten the distance between St. Kitts and Nevis, then Daddy could get the bridge that he was. My understanding is if Hurricane Hill gets pushed down, they will use that to extend the runway. But I feel you. You're walking with Carlisle. You look like you know this is not Tuesday time.
whoever would speak. It is the rules-based order that's allowed us to go to COP and to have a voice in terms of climate. It is.
Yeah, just to add something here. And I appreciate that the Premier is paying attention to these conversations. I am as well. It is very necessary at this time. I also give the Premier credit for, and I did not read the piece. I saw it and I was intimidated by the length of it. But I do appreciate that he is understanding. But it's not just that. He said the rules-based order is over, you know. He also said that the rule-based order never really existed. It was all fake. The great powers will do what they want, when they can. Everybody else, is trying to survive around that perspective. So it's not just saying that the rules-based order, and I've been explaining to Ayo, if you have ever no, when we're talking about the bridge part, he does be talking about bridges on Tuesday as well, sir. So you see, I show you our vibes. When well,
The rules-based
we'll
order
get
has
on.
afforded the Caribbean.
Oh yeah, rules-based order. So when I've been and this is how come I tell you I feel good. When I've been speaking to y'all about like, listen, the world what we used to know, all of them things they done with. We're not living in that era anymore. So it is very important, and this is why I appreciate what the Premier has done, is that we got to start to realize where we are and start to fit in. You go get in where you fit in accordingly. And yes, we will get the airport going to extend it to the west, like St. Thomas. But really and truly having it. The airport should not be in Newcastle, but that's my stupid opinion.
And the opportunity to sound our voices collectively and to put climate change at the forefront of the consciousness of the world and the conscience of the world. So if that dies, the question is what becomes of us? And the piece actually, I think, was entitled The Law of the Jungle, because if that dies and we move back to the law of the jungle, we know the law of the jungle, only the strong survive. So if the United States and the great powers, China, Russia, are enunciating a particular worldview, if Carney and Mertz and those fellows from Germany and Canada are enunciating a middle power view, then my question that I don't yet have an answer to is, what are the small countries doing?
Okay, me gonna answer the question there for he. Small countries also need to continue to do that. I have been talking about CLAC for a long time. Need to invite Canada as well. Basically, everybody in the West need to be having conversations. We reach the point now where Europe is doing deals with Latin America that it has never even contemplated doing before. They're ready to do deals with the Caribbean in certain areas as well. And so, for me, what is going on right now is there needs to be some diversification, understanding that ultimately you're going to get to deal with America. This is one of the reasons why I have continued to say, and it's not a perfect example, but we need to learn a lot from Singapore. They face a lot of the same constraints that we face, and they are thriving as a nation. Alan, quick question. If Mark was to acquire a Grenada passport through marriage, would he be able to run for parliament still? Climate change tell he the USA said it's a hope. I let's not put it in terms of the passport. If he was to gain Grenada citizenship, cause his citizenship is not the passport, but if he gain Grenada citizenship, I feel like at that point it's over. The weird thing that I get to understand about St. Kitts and Nevis is that you could be born outside of St. Kitts and Nevis, but got roots in St. Kitts and Nevis and run. But if you born in a Nevis and then you go after that, go get citizenship in another country, they will be disqualifying you. It is something that needs to be looked at. That definitely should be looked at. So here I tell you again, you could be banned right now in a Zimbabwe, but trace back and say and get a Nevision, Sinkis and Nevis citizenship, running the election. Nobody got a problem with that. If you're banned in a Sinkis and Nevis, however, and you go outside and get one, you're disqualified. A little personal, but I hear him fantasizing on the speech he made in Grenada. Well, I heard him as well speaking about that. The one thing that I didn't understand about his speech is he was talking about he's there for a party that is just starting. And Deacon Mitchell, as far as I know, is the prime minister. Why is my premier in a Grenada with some kind of just start-up party when Grenada got it? But hey, we live in a democracy, and they do too. We went 3 hours tonight. I hope y'all were entertained. We don't even finish with the goat. I think I'm going to break down the rest into some clips. Try to do it short, I get you in a quicker way. But we're going to be heavy on some local things this month here or so, based off of what I see. How unfair. This is my biggest thing on my list to get change in the Federation. I am the one champion this cause. Well, if I am able to help you in any manner, let me know how I could assist you. Anyway, everybody, we in April now. True, why is he meddling in political affairs? I'm telling you, I don't. And nobody asked him the question. Me no know he went to Grenada, go do all of them things there, you know. He just fly out of him out, he proud and he's so happy. And I was like, Mr. Premier, no. And remember before that he was talking about unity, you know. Caribbean needs to be unified. And he in a Grenada, I don't have to care about Grenada politics. I would have much preferred Sharon did it. But anyway, good night, people. We'll be back next week. Next week, I want to introduce a concept trying to get the government to be more efficient. And I would like the government to start to deal with something called key performance indicators. We're going to have some videos showing you how you could assess your government, how it could be used to assess the government, how it could be used to assess departments within the government, so that you could actually get a government that is working more for you. It's beneficial for the people, it's beneficial for the government. Because if the government do what the people want, they get to stay in, and the people get to see progress. So I will see y'all next week. As we go see who's going to win this championship. Jetty Taylor, if you're still listening, the University of Connecticut is winning this, obviously, sir. Good night. Respect everybody. Thank you for all of the. Oh yes, good man, good man. There's a show tomorrow. Think they got a queen in. She gonna be speaking about her journey, making cosmetics products for your skin care, hair, nails. I wanna believe all of them type of things there. And there is also the march on Friday. I hope that all persons who use cannabis, if you got somebody for you who use it, you could be in there as well. If you simply support the situation and you don't like to see what is going on from the government and you would like to see some accountability, all of them things there. Then my brother said that he was changing the way they give bonus. Yes, they were supposed to have some, they were supposed to be evaluations, and depending on if your supervisor if your supervisor says that you deserve it, you get to go to CARICOM County, you only find a single currency stoops. No man, I mean I got easy. And you know money. And you got easy. But anyway, I'm gonna see you next week, you know. Bless up ourselves, everybody take care of themselves as we get back into the regular swing of things, you know. So see you next week, Tuesday. Let's see if we can find. Let me see if I can find my music to go out. So
Every song I write, it's song. Tell me something, am I wrong? To believe in myself, put nobody above myself. Energy, build your energy. Love, charity, what a sight to see, what a sight to see. What a colossal, working and working to prosper. What you gonna stop for? Keep on, it's right on the corner. Hey, make way when I'm weird there. Hey, tell it you them stay there. Hey, that is your destiny. Maybe what you ought to be. Even if no one you reach nowhere. So you have to find a way. Them no one you reach nowhere. So you have to find a way. Them no one can see you fly. Them no one can see you touch sky. Them no one can see you